You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to the Coaching Inn. I'm Claire Pedrick, and today it's my pleasure to be in conversation with Fee Stevenson and Andy Riggs. And we're going to be talking about coaching as an interim. And we just got into conversation and started thinking this was a very interesting subject for a podcast. So welcome, Fee and Andy.
Hello. Thank you very much, Claire. So I'm Fee Stevenson. I work as a coach, but also do some interim management and some meeting facilitation.
Great. And Andy?
Hi, I'm Andy Riggs. I'm an interim finance director in the higher education space.
Cool. So we would love to hear about a little bit about your journey as a coach. And then let's see what we're learning about being a coach under interim at the same time.
Okay, shall I go first?
Yeah.
So I spent most of my career in consultancy management. Decided to take a change of direction probably about 12 years ago and went off to study a master's. And at the same time as that, I kept getting phone calls from people saying, would you mentor someone that is on my team? And I thought, well, if I'm going to be asked to do this, I wanted to be sure that I'd do a good job. So I started some coach training at the same time. And then over the years, I've done various different coach journeys with different organisations.
And you're still very much a bit of both?
Bit of both still, yes.
Great. Good, thank you. Andy, what about you? What's your journey?
I think it's always been there, and I've loved developing people and teams. The beginning of the lockdown, I did a course with the AOEC to train as an exec coach, and then I've become ICF qualified. So I now then bring coaching into my interim work and also do coaching outside and alongside that as well.
So what difference does it make?
I think it's really interesting having had coach training late in my career. I really wish that I had had coach training in my 20s, because I think of all the years when I was managing large teams and how much better a job I would have done with some coaching skills. I even think they should maybe teach it in schools. But I think having coach training has made me a better manager. It's certainly made me a better listener and a better questioner.
Mm. Can we follow that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just interested, what being a better listener, what difference does that make when you go in and go out of an organisation in quite a short period of time?
For me, going into an interim job, sometimes, it starts off, you're only going to be there a few months to perhaps cover some sick leave or maternity cover or whatever. And for me, I think it's really important, certainly for the first few weeks, just to listen, to really listen to everyone and to not to rush in, all guns blazing or anything like that, but to really, really listen up front. I think that's really important.
And I think for me, it's also about building trust. So I'd be with an organisation maybe for 6, 9, 12 months at a time. And there's a number of people to line manage and those teams. And going in, not knowing any of the organisational history, but knowing the sector, for me, it's that listening and building trust. And also I really keen to leave a legacy, rather than just keeping the plate spinning whilst they recruit somebody else, to actually help the people I'm working with step into more of who they really are. And so coaching is really helpful in that.
So interim as much more than a gap filler is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And often you start with one issue or one set of circumstances and they morph into something else. Or there's a recruitment cycle that doesn't work, so you're here for another 6 months. and maybe it's because of the coaching bias or the coaching mindset is I love developing people, and often, almost in some ways, you bring a little bit more of a different perspective, even though I might be line managing them, that I'm only here for a period of time, I've got different experiences, and I'm not going to be here forever. So there's something about that time frame that makes it special.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with that. I had one interim management role where I wasn't the subject matter expert. I was coming in to manage a team in a gap between two people. And I absolutely had to say to the team, you're the subject matter experts. I'm here to walk beside you and I can help you in the process and I help you work things out. But there was no way in a short period of time I was going to become a subject matter expert. And it really helped helping them to grow and develop and walking alongside them and actually not knowing the detail. It was a bit like a coaching session. Sometimes you don't really need to know the detail, understand it. But to walk alongside them and help them through a process and help them through things is just, it was really, really special, actually.
As you're talking, there's a lot of resonance with a podcast that I recently recorded at the Coach's Journey with Robbie Swale and my writing buddy Lucia, because we were talking about the dominant stance. And what I think I'm hearing you saying is it's possible to go into an interim job with your dominant stance being coaching, and you have other stances as well.
Yes, and it surfaces in informal conversation until you have coaching as a conversation in the midst of doing stuff, and I think even that's been very helpful, and helping them being seen and heard. Well, often previous line managers may have less so done that. And also, in a couple of my current one and a couple of clients I've worked for, I've also done, let's have a formal coaching session, even with people I line manage, and we've set aside time, go to a different place, different hat, contracted, and that's been really interesting.
I'm really interested in that, Andy, because I don't do that. We've had this conversation before. I don't do that when I'm interim manager because I'm their manager. But I'm really interested in that. And
I think there's probably a range. I remember one at a previous university where we had this conversation, and it was like a switch going on with that individual, and it was about them finding their voice, and suddenly they jumped into action and started to change significantly. And it was that almost, and it came up in the conversation, we talked about permission, and almost that people finding their own permission to step into things. That was really helpful. Sometimes I found it, the hat of manager that I clearly wear was very evident, and sometimes it's harder for people to make that switch, and here's the stuff I want, and will you make a decision, and what should we do next? And that's the bit about the power differential I've been learning, particularly my current assignment, that's been so really interesting.
In this podcast with Robbie Swell, one of the things we were talking about is internal coaches, external coaches, and coaches who are hired in the organisation, who are sort of external coaches, because they have that distance.
Yes.
And I'm sensing as you talk that one of the superpowers that you're describing of being an interim is distance. So you're not completely internal, but you're also not completely external.
Yeah, and my current university, they have an in-house coaching team that I've joined. So I've also have a couple of thinkers who are not part of my area, who are more equal in power. But it's been really nice to have that variety within one in one job.
Mm.
But yes, it is, and I do use and I'm a coach as a sort of a way of explaining what I do, and mark me from people who are maybe have done this job before.
Ah. So upfront naming the difference.
Yes. And I think I also come into an organisation for a year, 6 months, with a view to help people move forward, as well as the tasks or the projects or the business as usual stuff.
That's what strikes me about the way both of you talk about this thing, because you're so not. Sorry, this sounds really awful, because you'll have to make more meaning. As you describe the work that you do, it feels as though you are much more concerned about the people than that you are about the task, and that you see that as a really important part of your journey.
Yes, and as I work in finance, then maybe that's slightly unusual. Maybe. But I've always been that way, and I think the coaching enables me I've now got the skill base and the knowledge and the experience to be much more fine-grained in how I use it, and I can see opportunities in a way that I wouldn't have done previously. I was on a call with somebody recently, just talking about a specification of a work stream for a finance system bit. And then at the end of it, I said, well, what was the most useful thing for you out of this conversation? And then they said, they thanked me for reflecting back and wanting to find out what they were thinking about it. I wouldn't have done that before.
So I'm sensing it makes you a better interim.
It's more fun this way.
I think so. Interestingly, my current interim role that I'm just coming to an end with, they actually employed me because I was a coach. I think it was inspired, actually. They had a gap and decided that they wanted to take the opportunity to develop their team. And they actually said, we want to take this opportunity and we want you to come in and look at a people strategy and develop the team and help them all to grow and develop. And that was a big part of the remit. And I do think it was inspired. And I think an interim is a really good way of doing that, doing something really different for a while.
Mm. I'm really curious about what's the appeal of interim for the two of you, because clearly it's like a calling.
I love the variety.
Mm.
So often it's the same role, similar role, same sector. Every university is completely different. And the sector is very broad and universities sit in different places. But I love being immersed usually in the first 2 weeks, I now have to understand politics, people, backstory, numbers, processes, systems, and after a week and a half come up with a report to say, good, bad and ugly, what can we do in 6 months whilst I'm here? And I love that immersive learning period, but I also love the variety of not being embedded in doing the financial cycle in the same place for years. I love the variety, and I've come across, I think my experience is broader and deeper because I've now worked in 9 universities rather than a lesser number.
Mm.
Yeah, for me, it's the variety too. I think because I worked in consultancy in my early career, I loved, new challenges and, moving on to the next one. So for me, definitely the variety. And for me, because outside of interim work, I typically work with people who are new to leadership or management or struggling with leadership or management. So for me, doing some interim work, I hope keeps me sharp as well.
It just, as you're talking, it's compellingly adding value to the role. What's the response that you get from the people who've hired you as you leave?
I think it's great on an individual basis, and also I hope I've done more in a full way than. And I think if it's a place where I come alive, then I bring more energy and life to everything I do, even if it's a bit boring at times.
I was reminded, actually, when you were speaking a minute ago, Andy, of the role I alluded to earlier, where I couldn't be the subject matter expert in a hurry. When I left, the guy who was the most senior person that reported to me sat me down and went through the list of all the things he learnt from me, which was really special. Really special. Yeah, didn't expect that at all.
And that's ironic, isn't it? Because one of the things I'm picking up as you're talking is that in a world where everyone is our teacher, when you move around different organisations as an interim, they are all your teacher, aren't they? So you're gaining a huge amount. Yes. But what a gift that he's now saying, and these are all the things I learnt from you.
Yeah, I had a whole list of things I'd learnt from him too. So it evened out. But yeah.
Yeah, there's something about freshness and really keeping the thing alive. Andy, I can see you're mulling something.
No, I think the other bit that I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, that in a coaching conversation, the coach brings the mindset of a super strong belief that the person in front of them has all the ability to move forward, and I think I now exhibit that even more than maybe I used to. Both in coaching conversations, but in informal coaching conversations and more generally. And I think there's something about seeing people for who they are and maybe slightly separate from what they do. And then, and also having that belief that they can step forward to do whatever it is. And I think that's the bit that I'm maybe learning at the moment of an extra bit that the coaching presence brings in an interim job.
No backstory.
Sometimes there's a bit of a backstory,
but I'm getting a sense that this thing about a fresh start for people and believing in everyone.
Yes.
That really enables people to, the word that's coming into my head as you're talking is redemption.
Okay.
that there's potential in everyone.
Sure. And also as an interim, I'm only here for a period of time, and I don't have loads of time to get up to speed slowly with everything. And we move forward and have more fun if people are more engaged and have a higher level of trust.
We have more fun.
True. Sometimes.
We sometimes have more fun. So what would you want to say to interims who are listening to this, who haven't really engaged in a coaching style as one of their dominant stances?
I think one of the things that often, if you're the subject expert, you then tell. And I think coaching is really great in staying curious a little bit longer and holding back on the telling, and then still asking, drawing out the context and what might they do next and what are the options. And you get a better answer, but people are much more engaged and empowered. And I think that's the bit that would because of the change from one organisation to another, the soft skills are even more important. And I think coaching is such great something to add on to a professional career.
Yeah. What do you think, Fee?
Well, I think, there's a lot around at the moment about managers learning coaching skills, which I absolutely think is brilliant. And funnily enough, it was when the three of us chatted before, really thinking about actually when you're in an interim role, how actually that is something quite useful and quite special. It can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So do it is what I'm hearing you saying.
Yeah, do it, definitely.
If you're an interim, do it. Well, thank you for everything that you've brought to the Coaching In today. It's absolutely a delight to talk to you both. And this conversation's been brewing, I know, for a long time. So it's great that we've had it. So if people want to talk about coaching and interim, how do they make contact with you?
I think for me, probably LinkedIn is probably the best way.
Okay, I'll put both LinkedIn. So Andy Riggs and Fee Stevenson, and I'll put the links in the show notes.
Thank you.
So Fee and Andy, thank you so much for coming to the Coaching In. I'm sure there's more of this conversation to be had over time, but really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your insights and your learning with us today. So I'm Claire Pedrick, and you've been listening to the Coaching In with my guests Andy Riggs and Fee Stevenson. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.